with me, and you'll see that I live in a world that don't give a fuck, bitch.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your man, Fat Man Buddha, and today we are going to be going further into the Masonic usurpance of our nation, because it is important that we talk about these type of things when we are discussing reparations and segregation, and why we need this as a people and as a nation. The last video we had the great metaphysicist Phil Valentine, who is very, very well knowledgeable about these certain things. We're going to be discussing him in our next video. Today, we have the one and only Steve Kukley, and he is someone I think that everybody is going to grow to love because he talks like we do when we're at the barbecue. You know, he's not trying to go with all these big words and all these fancy metaphors. He's just giving it to you exactly how you need to hear it. Now, if you don't hear it this way, then I don't know what to tell you. I truly do not know what to tell you, because at that point, you're just putting your head in the ground and covering your head with dirt. You know, the most important thing that you have to understand is that it is the Freemasons versus the Freemasons. You know, if you are a bloodline descendant here in the land of Turtle Island, you have to understand that you are a natural born Freemason. All of our women are natural born Eastern Stars. We don't have to go through any secret organization ritual, because we went through a spirit ritual before we got here. And I know that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, especially those who tend to stay away from all the talks about the occult and witchcraft and voodoo and all the esoteric speakings. We will be bringing up Bobby Hemmett sooner or later, but right now I want to deal with a more physical presence before we start dealing with a spiritual presence. And the reason why I want to deal with a more physical presence is because I feel as though we can all agree upon a physical presence rather than everyone sitting here and arguing amongst themselves about a spiritual presence. In the words of Malcolm X, if your religion has not done anything for you other than help you turn the other cheek when your enemy has attacked you, then you should put your religion in the closet. They don't hang you because you're a Muslim. They don't hang you because you're Christian. They don't hang you because you're Hebrew or Jewish. They hang you because you're black. And if you cannot come to this table and understand that we have a common enemy on the basis of us being the same physically, then we have no use for you. I don't care whether you are a Muslim or a Christian or you're a Hebrew. It does not matter to me. If you look like me, then we are in the same fight together, because they're not trying to kill us for any other reason than who we are. Not what we are, who we are. So that intro took a lot longer, so I'm going to edit it. And without further ado, let's get to the great Steve Kukley.
many times when people say that there's no conspiracy to run the country.
I have some materials here that deals with the education system that is currently the education system used in the United States of America.
All you gotta do is pick up your dollar bill. Say, well, hold it, let's go through this a minute. Here is a pyramid with an all-seeing eye that underneath it says Novus Ordo Seclorum. Now, everybody say Bush got a new program called New World Order. But how could George Bush in 1990 come up with a new program that George Washington put on a dollar bill in 1776?
This system is a derivative of the Prussian system of education. Prussian being the German system of education. Now, when the Prussians lost to Napoleon, the generals found that the reason why they lost wasn't because they weren't good soldiers. It was because everybody was thinking for themselves. And the elite, the aristocracy, began to introduce a certain education pattern to the next generations. They began to limit or put a ceiling on causing a flourishing of intelligence. When you read too much, you begin to want to inquire more. But they set it up so well that what you do read confines you anyway, because you don't believe there's anything beyond that. Now, when they did that, they did it right before the Industrial Revolution.
In fact, that Roman numeral up under there is 1776. In fact, that pyramid and the all-seeing eye probably was never even seen visually by George Washington in his whole fucking life. But what do that mean? Why would a bunch of white boys, Masons, put a symbol of what they call the great architect on their most commonly used currency, but then go out and call the remnants of that 3/5 of a man? But then they were what they call Freemasons, so if you was only 3/5 of a guy, you couldn't get in it, even though it was yours to begin with. That's a whole nother story.
Prussian-German education system, mind control. Using the basic philosophy prescribed in the duties of the state, combined with John Locke's view, which is in 1690, that children are a blank slate, and lessons from Rousseau on how to write on that slate, Prussia established a three-tiered education system that was considered scientific in nature. It began around 1807, and the system was in place by 1819. Now, the important part of the Prussian system was that it defined what was to be learned, what was to be brought about, or what was to be thought about, how long to think about it, and when a child was to think of something else. Basically, it was a system of thought control, and it established a penchant in the psyche of the German elite that would later manifest itself into what we now refer to as mind control.
Now, of course, Tony Browder, in the Browder file, everybody should have a Browder file. In the Browder file, he'll go through all of the things relevant to what's on the eagle and on the other side, the phoenix. Of course, it was drawn as a phoenix. Now, a guy named Manly Palmer Hall, who is an expert, an old white dusty guy who died recently, is an expert in Masonic writings, once wrote a book called The Secret Destiny of America. And in that book, and he's known for writing over 2,000 different Masonic books, in that book, he talks about the pyramid and the all-seeing eye, but most importantly, he shows that that phoenix is in fact a phoenix and not an eagle. That's important because the phoenix is a bird that has a 500-year relationship. Mythical African. 500 years seems to coincide from 1492 to 1992. The dumbest people on the planet in 1492 thought the world was square. They were so dumb. But by 1992, the dumbest beasts, cave dwellers, evil, contempt for God, contempt for nature, hate for the direct descendants of God Almighty has risen up and conquered the planet in 499 years, and he's about to sit in his chair 1992. That's important because where they are is as important as where we are.
Well, listen to what I'm talking about. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not making any direct accusations, but I'm letting you understand that you can create a system or a ceiling to a person's awareness by taking away the different outlets and the different paths that they may pursue to make their own conclusions. Once you take away certain key information from someone, give them a base of information and a ceiling or a context of information by which to operate, that's all they know. That's all they know. This was the plan, to keep most of the children in the general population from reading for the first 6 to 7 years of their lives. Well, you say, well then, Reverend Valentine, what is all this about getting our children to read? They took it to the next harmonic. What are our children given to read? Even the stuff that they're reading now that has the quote-unquote cultural context involved. It's still about teaching our children to acclimate into the system, only having some sort of pseudo-identity. It does not teach the children to drop completely out. It does not give the children the 6 and 7 different levels necessary for them to learn. It teaches them how to conform, or at least gives them another clip in the ammunition for self-awareness. But that clip runs out because after you've taken your own culture into this system, we have not taught our children what to do when they encounter the resistance to it. Where are the support mechanisms for them to go out and flourish based upon what we're teaching them? In 1814, the first American, Mr. Edward Everett, went to Prussia to get his PhD. He eventually became governor of Massachusetts. During the next 30 years or so, a whole line of American dignitaries came to Germany to earn degrees. Now, degrees is a German. That's that German, that's that, what's that, Brother Morris, the secret society came out of Germany. Not even Illuminati, but called it before that. The Freemasons.
Evidence of a secret society. These Masons had broke away from the British on the cover, but were secretly linked to the British through secret Masonic lodges who were chartered by the British. That's why when you talk about Skull and Bones, remember it is chartered by some Germans. So when the question comes up, where did the Illuminati go in 1782 when it got crushed? It went up into the University of Ingolstadt and submerged itself in other secret societies until it reemerged again as a part of Skull and Bones in 1832.
Pause it real quick. What he's trying to say is he's trying to refer to the Skull and Bone Freemasons that originated out of Germany. Now, despite all this hype about the Illuminati was only a name taken after the Skull and Bones Freemasonry was discovered and all hell broke loose. Once the government discovered the Freemasonry in Germany called the Skull and Bones, they immediately started to slaughter them. One by one, lodge by lodge, they slaughtered them everywhere they could find them. They slaughtered them in Italy. They slaughtered them in France. They slaughtered them in Spain. They slaughtered them in Germany. But there was a small sect of the Freemason organization of the Skull and Bones that renamed themselves the Illuminati. And I know if you are a person who watched Angels and Demons, and Angels and Demons, they tell you that the Illuminati originated within Italy. But that's a misconception, and that's pretty much just a lie. Originally, the Illuminati came from Germany and was called the Skull and Bones. But during the purge by the German government, which was an ongoing thing, which is why it was such a big thing that Hitler was trying to kill these Jews. Are you understanding what I'm saying? History is not what you think it is. Even the Germans, one of their highest rank in the military one of their highest ranks in the Nazi military was what? Skull and bones. You would literally see them wearing a skull and bone pendant to let everyone know that they had reached the highest degree available. You understand? During the purge, a small group of them escaped and fled to Italy and renamed themselves the Illuminati. This is what he's getting to. This whole thing between Britain invading the Americas, the 13 colonies, that whole thing was nothing but a large Freemasonic war. That's all it was. It was a large Freemasonic war. And what he's basically trying to explain right now is the Freemasons in America who had gained their independence. In other words, they gained their own independent lodge away from the Grand Lodge of London, which was originally Oxford. That was our Grand Lodge. That was the Grand Lodge of London was Oxford. But during their Masonic war in Europe, where the Moors had lost and was forced to flee to the Americas, the Grand Lodge of London was named the Grand Lodge of our trusted Queen Marie. Not Queen Elizabeth, Queen Marie. So when the Grand Lodge of London had told the other Freemasons in America that they wanted to stop the war against the indigenous people, which is us, and was preparing to send the Prince Hall Freemasons their own Freemasonic charter. This is what started the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was never started because of taxes. The Boston Tea Party was started because the Prince Hall Freemasons was receiving their Masonic charter from London. And along with that Masonic charter from London, they were going to be receiving a peace treaty between the two Freemasonic lodges. Feeling betrayed by the Grand Lodge of London, the Freemasons here in America turned to the Freemasonic Lodge in Germany called the Skull and Bones. And that initially is how the German Freemasons, the Nazi Freemasons of the Skull and Bones, started to infiltrate the Americas. You understand? It never really started with this war in Germany between Hitler and these so-called Jews. No, it started right here. It started with the Freemasons in America feeling betrayed by the Grand Lodge of London because they did not want to give up the land which they had stolen. You see how long this whole thing's been going on with the world trying to set everything straight, everything right again. They were supposed to then give us our reparations, which was our land, which was our this entire thing. They were supposed to have been left and returned to Europe. But because they had found free enterprise here, because they had found free liberty from the Grand Lodge of London, because they felt as though here they were untouchable. They continued the onslaught. And when the Grand Lodge of London no longer supported them, and they had their backs against the wall with the indigenous people, which was us, we are the indigenous people, we were beating their ass. Go look at all those wars, the Sioux War, the Cherokee War, the Choctaw War, the damn Seminole, especially the Seminole War, and the Gullah Geechee War. We were beating their ass, even with Nate Turner, even with Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman rose hell from New York to Canada. We were winning. So what they did was they started to act like they had nothing else. And they started to pretend as though they were honoring a peace treaty between us. In the midst of that peace treaty, they went to Germany and they enlisted themselves and swore fealty and loyalty to the Grand Lodge of the Skull and Bone Nazi Freemasons. That's what he's trying to explain right here. That's why this is so important. Because
now Alfonso Taft is a part of the Taft family that has run Ohio still to this day. Anybody here from Ohio? Anybody here from Ohio will tell you that the Taft's been running it since it was a state. Senators, congressmen, a Taft now just become Secretary of State. Another Taft is head of NATO. Another Taft just died. But the son of Alfonso Taft, the co-founder of Skull and Bones, his son is named William Howard Taft. William Howard Taft is the only man in the history of America to become Chief Justice and President. That's important. Now, Skull and Bones at Yale University is a postgraduate secret society. What's important about that? Which means that you go through your initiation in your senior year, but the real activity with the organization is after graduation. Now, when you go through the initiation rites, they give you $15,000 cash and a promise of lifetime success if you obey the laws of the Skull and Bones.
We'll get right to it. Horace Mann, instrumental in developing the education system in America, was amongst this group. Horace Mann was amongst the group that went over to Germany to learn the Prussian system, the three-tiered system. Those who earned degrees in Germany came back to the United States and staffed all of the major universities. In 1850, Massachusetts and New York utilized this system, as well as to promote the concept that the state is the father of the children. Hello? That's what welfare is. Horace Mann's sister, Elizabeth Peabody, Peabody Foundation. Anybody look at PBS? Okay. Peabody Foundation saw to it that after the Civil War, the Prussian system taught in the northern states was integrated into the conquered South between 1865 and 1900. By 1900, all the PhDs in the United States were trained in Prussia. This project also meant that one-room schoolhouses had to go. Couldn't have the ma and pa teaching the children anymore. Where did you hear that system before? No. Overseas, the great demon. Who's the great red demon? Russia. This is socialism. Karl Marx. Very good. One of the
Interestingly enough, in the story they did on Channel 9 in Washington, D.C. on Skull and Bones recently, last week, they mentioned that when Skull and Bones is mentioned, you have to walk out of the room. So they showed Senator Bob Curry being asked about Skull and Bones, and he says, "Now, Senator, I hear when they mention Skull and Bones, you got to leave." He says, "Bye." Then they showed another time when a brother asked Bush, when he was sitting with a foreign dignitary, said, "Mr. Bush, are you in Skull and Bones?" And Bush looked right at him and he says, "I'm not leaving the room." That's code talk. Now, sources on Skull and Bones. Best source, several. One book called America's Secret Establishment by a professor from University of California named Anthony Sutton. I got a copy of the book up here somewhere. I want to show you the cover. America's Secret Establishment. Got a whole breakdown of the Brundys, the Harrimans, the Lords, the Pillsburys, the Tafts, and all the major families that were involved in the book, but exhibit number whatever, an introduction into the order of Skull and Bones. Now, what this book does is show you, in fact, there's small versions of this because he put them out in booklet form like this before he put it in a big book like this. There are 4 booklets that go into this book. But if you get any of them, did y'all sell books here? Well, I need to show you some places to order, because when they hear the tapes, but you sell hundreds of these. All right. Okay, so we need to get them. Now, another source is Esquire magazine, September 1977. Article by a guy named Rosenblum. Of course, he's Jewish. He wrote an article called The Last Rites of Skull and Bones.
In Carnegie's hometown of Gary, Indiana, the system was implemented between 1910 and 1916. Now, this is very important. Mostly through the efforts of William Wirt, the school superintendent. It involved no academic endeavor whatsoever. It worked so well in supplying willing workers for the steel mills that it was decided by Carnegie to bring the system to New York City. In 1917, they initiated a program in New York in 12 schools with the objective of enlarging the program to encompass 100 schools and eventually all the schools of New York. William Wirt is the one who supervised that particular transaction. Unfortunately for Carnegie, and listen well, unfortunately for Carnegie, the population of the 12 schools were predominantly Jews who innately recognized what was being done and the nature of the new education system. There's no innately recognized. They knew the system. And the elite from their own came to New York. You understand? Check it. 3 weeks of rioting followed. Now you understand how change happens? 3 weeks of rioting followed, and the editorials of the New York Times were very critical of the plan. Over 200 Jewish school children were thrown in jail. The whole political structure of New York that had tried this scheme were then thrown out of office during the next election. A book describing this scenario, carefully, listen, The Great School Wars by Diane Ravitch. Listen, get these books. By Diane Ravitch. Curiously, William Wirt, check it out, William Wirt was committed to an insane asylum about 1930 after going around making public speeches about his part in the large conspiracy to bring about a controlled state of mind on certain people. He was killed 2 years later.
Now, one of the things they do in Skull and Bones is they have a little ritual. They take the initiate and they set him at a table. They put 2 skulls on the table. Skeleton heads. They tell the initiate, I want you to look at these 2 skulls and I want you to tell me which one is the fool and which one is the wise man. He said, after that, I want you to tell me which one is the rich man and which one is the beggar. Now the initiate, he looking all over the skulls, he looking, shit time passing. They stand there just looking at him, right? Wondering when he gonna figure it out that he can't tell the difference. Right? Because the lesson they're teaching the initiate, their language is when you're dead, you're dead. Meaning you can't tell when you're dead whether you was a rich man or a beggar, a fool or a wise man. So kick that ass while you live in fuck heaven. White people are linear. Oh, now, watch them now. White people are linear. They just do shit. Right? Straight. They don't stand and account for nothing. Right? Of course, people, we're circular. You reap what you sow. Cause and effect. What go around, come around. Eye for an eye. Those are the laws that are known in the African tradition. We sit in circles. But the white man, he linear. Right? Hey, but check out what they do. Up in the ritual, in the Masonic and in the Skull and Bones, they say, look, trust no one who believes in heaven, for they'll suffer hell while they're on earth. Now, don't that sound like us? Don't that sound? To teach a person in a secret society, trust no one who believes in heaven, means that the believers in heaven are vulnerable to pain while on earth. Now, it's all right of believing in heaven, but fuck retribution. We can deliver it while we're here. God would have wanted it that way.
Habits of death. Now, what is the habits of death? Habits of death is exactly what it is that we pursue every day. We don't realize that we are in a syndrome of death. The very thought process that we use, the very actions that we unconsciously partake in are the habits of death. Let us go outside right now and look at the way they look the types of foods they put into our communities. And they have created a habit of death. There are non-foods. There's no foods in our community that you could walk out into. Everything is in a box. Were you born in a box, brothers and sisters? No. So your food should never come from a box. It should come from what nature herself gives to you. Now, the reason why we are so susceptible to disease is because we don't even walk on the dirt anymore. Do you realize that the biology of the human structure and the biology of the planet are synergistically linked in such a way that the mother continuously feeds us? But now we have blocked her. We have systematically isolated ourselves from her, and we are taking in artificial forms of agitation. This is an artificial form of agitation. This is not real light. So what does the body have to do? It has to genetically structure itself to this pathological environment that we are working in. What does that do? It then systematically limits our ability to organically interface with the properties necessary for us to establish our next paradigm. That is, Nature Mother herself. We need to go into the forest, we need to go into the nature of things and let that instrument, let that technology talk to us directly. We have lost that link. And what do we link into now? We go into the computers.